All right, I'm gonna record. I think it tells you. All right. So, um, okay. So, Father Vance, thank you for joining us
Absolutely.
today. Could you first tell us just in general, what does it mean to be a priest?
That's a great question. It's a big question. It's one I probably can't answer in 30 seconds or a minute or so. But I mean, to me, the first thing that comes to my mind, my heart to say, is that it means everything to me to be a priest. I mean, it's certainly, and I didn't always know this in my life, and I had to come to this by little ways, and but it's definitely what God wants of me in my life. It's the most fulfilling thing the most fulfilling way that I can spend my life. And I feel like the essence of being a priest is to be able to bring the sacraments to people's lives,
Mm,
and especially the Eucharist and confession or reconciliation. Those are the two that I probably celebrate the most often, with students and with other people.
mhm, mhm.
And that's just a beautiful thing for me to be able to do that. So that's what it means for me to be a priest, is to bring the church and especially the sacraments to people's lives.
Mm, yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, we've talked a lot about how, the sacraments are, Jesus coming into our lives directly to enable us to live his mission, right? So
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
that fits in
Absolutely.
that fits in really well. That's what our priests are here for. So I'm so glad you put it that way. So then, could you say a little bit? What do you love about being a priest?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I don't mean to take anything away from your vocation as a married person, as a father, because I think if we're talking about these things, we have more in common with each other in terms of our vocation than we do separate from one another. I think a lot of people would think that we are completely opposite in our vocations, because you are married and you have your own children, and I'm not married, never will be, and don't have my
Hmm.
own children, right?
Hmm.
But we're both fathers, and we're
Hmm.
both
Hmm.
teachers, and we're both people who in our own way are trying to bring Christ to our families and to those we're responsible for. And so one of the things I love about being a priest is the access that it gives me to people's lives.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
nobody really questions me when I walk into any kind of meeting at Bishop Kelly. I can go
Hmm.
to the
Hmm.
development meetings, I can go to the administrative meetings, I can go to the department meetings. Nobody, they just say, "Oh, there's Father Vance. He's welcome in this discussion."
Hmm.
you know and so I
Hmm.
love that. And the same is true in the classroom. I mean, I've been in English classes and I've been in theology classes since I've been at BK, and I love that. And my goal is to get into a science or a math class, get invited into those classes too, so I can bring my priesthood there too. When I was at
Yeah.
Gonzaga Prep, I used to do a yearly thing with the science classes. In one of the years, I can't remember which year it was, but they were talking about evolution and creation, and
Hmm.
I would give a little presentation on the church's, support of the theory of evolution, basically.
Mm.
So the first thing I like is access. And when I walk into a hospital, nobody questions why I would walk into a person's room, and I
Right.
can go into a person's room that nobody else is allowed into, because
Right.
I'm trusted. And I think another thing that I love about the priesthood is just the trust in which people invest. And I don't know if you talked to your students about the scandals of the church in the last 20 years or so,
A bit, yeah.
but that's been hard, and some people's trust in priests has been damaged because of those scandals.
Yeah.
But for me, that's one of the most sacred and blessed things that I have, is people's trust.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that. I really do love that.
Yeah, it's that double-edged sword. When it's a beautiful thing when it's respected, and
Yep.
like you respect it and honor that trust and recognize it, and then it is one of the worst things that can happen when it's betrayed,
When it's
as you
betrayed and
as
destroyed,
as you know.
absolutely right. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sort of, yeah, it's you can't really you can't do it any other way though. You just gotta we just have to keep people safe, which we're working on. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what I don't ever want to do is betray anybody's trust.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to do that. That's one of the most frightening things about the life
Mm.
is,
Mm.
I don't want to do that. So what I need to do is I need to stay grounded in my own prayer life. I need to stay grounded in the fact that God has called me to this life, and not because of any special thing that I have, but because that's what God wants from me.
Mm. Mhm.
And I have to stay humble, and I have to stay prayerful, and I have to stay, you know, I have to go to confession too, and keep my soul clean that way. And then I put myself in the best position to not violate anybody else's trust.
Mm, right. Yeah. Wow. It's well, that's what any of us really have to do, but
Absolutely.
there's sort of um, it's probably more front and center in your mind a lot of the time.
I mean, I think for teachers, it's an issue as well.
Yeah, there's a trust there, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 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 Well, I feel like, I mean, just personally, I feel like we're lucky to have a religious priest on at BK, even though we're a diocesan school. So it's sort of just a lucky quirk of fate to me. But it's an important thing that a lot of Catholics, I think, don't really know about, is what the difference is between a religious priest and a diocesan priest, or a Jesuit and a parish priest, or um, a regular garden variety,
Yeah,
parish priest.
yeah.
So could
I
you
mean,
tell
certainly
our
not to
students a
diminish
little
the
bit?
work those guys do either, because
No,
it is a
yeah,
different vocation, though, right?
absolutely,
And
yeah.
like you were just saying, I mean, a diocesan priest, I would tell your students, is somebody who belongs to a diocese, and that's where the word diocesan comes from. And a diocese is a geographical boundary that is presided over by a bishop. And Bishop Peter Christensen is our bishop here in the Diocese of Boise. And all those guys who have grown up in Idaho, the whole state of Idaho is one diocese. And so all those guys that have grown up in Idaho and gone to the seminary belong to this diocese. And they mostly, not exclusively, but mostly do parish work, right? And there is a diocesan priest up at University of Idaho, Father Chase, and so they sometimes do other kinds of work, and they hospital chaplaincy and stuff like that, but mostly they do parish work. And a religious order is another kind of priest. We're both exactly the same in terms of our priesthood, but I joined the Jesuits, and the Jesuits we don't limit ourselves just to one diocese. And so, like many people at BK know, I came to BK from 2 years in Los Angeles, where I was on the campus ministry staff at USC. And before that, I was up in northern Alaska, where I was working at a small Catholic school in Fairbanks, Alaska. And before that, I was at a Jesuit high school in Spokane, Gonzaga Prep, for 6 years. And so I move around a lot more than a diocesan priest would. Each religious order has what we call a charism, which is kind of a theme or a major ministry that we're involved with. And the Jesuits have always, since St. Ignatius of Loyola founded the Jesuits, have always been involved with education. And so, you think about all the Jesuit colleges and universities, there are 28 Jesuit colleges and universities in the United States, in places like Georgetown, and Gonzaga and Seattle University and Santa Clara, and so all those places, but also high schools, and in some instances middle schools. We run middle schools as well. That's a newer thing for us, but I've been a Jesuit high school guy for almost 30 years, and so I started my teaching career back in the early 90s in Seattle at Seattle Prep, the Jesuit high school there. And then I've worked at Jesuit high schools all over the world, really. One in Asuncion, Paraguay, and I taught English teachers in Hong Kong at the Jesuit high school in Hong Kong, and so it's been great. It's been a great excuse for me to travel around. And so what I'm looking for, though, and I hope this is good news for Bishop Kelly. I think it is, because I've gotten this from a lot of different people. I'm looking to stay a while now. I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I don't want to move every couple of years anymore. I kind of want to put some roots down. And I love, my colleagues at Bishop Kelly, and I love the school, and I love the mission, I love the students, and so I'm as happy as I think I'm going to be anywhere. So why don't I just put some roots down and stay for a while?
Well, it's great. We're happy I'm happy that you're here. I'll speak for myself, but I know the students are too. Did you ever? I've actually never asked you this before. Did you ever consider becoming a diocesan priest?
That's a good question. So I was influenced by the Jesuits through a parish in Missoula, Montana. So we had a Jesuit high school in Missoula, Loyola Sacred Heart, but I don't remember my parents ever asking me. We never had the conversation if I was going to go there or not. But we went to the Jesuit parish, St. Francis Xavier Parish. And so the priests that I got to know when I was in high school and starting college were all Jesuits. And so they kind of influenced me. But yes, I did think about others too. I remember a book that I was given when I approached the Jesuits and said, I think maybe I might feel a call to be one of you. They gave me this big, thick book of all the religious orders in the United States and all the dioceses of the United States too. And I read that cover to cover, and I really kind of digested that and kind of filtered that through my own kind of rudimentary and really immature prayer at that point in my life, you know. And but you know, the Jesuits kind of came out on top, and so I did consider other orders, but not really as seriously as I ever considered the Jesuits.
Right. That was what you knew and what
I knew. Yeah,
were
exactly.
connected with. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So then, because I know you're not someone who's afraid of controversy, I'm just gonna, this is always a question, and I'm gonna let you answer it this time because I field it a lot. But you know, it's an important question for us in our society. Why can't women become priests?
Yeah,
that
is a good question, an important question. And if your students are paying attention, you know, Pope Francis has tried a little bit to address some of this, not quite with priesthood, but with the diaconate, with being deacons. He convened a group of scholars to look at church history and give him some recommendation about whether women should be allowed to be ordained deacons, like Deacon Rick at our school is. The traditional line from the Catholic Church is that a priest needs to reflect Jesus somehow. And because Jesus was both fully human and fully divine, and in his full humanity, he was male, then the teaching is that only a male can fully reflect Jesus's humanity, or, you know. And so, you know, I understand that that's a controversial topic. I myself have gone back and forth about what that means, and I think any thinking person does. But you know, the reality of the Catholic Church is that things change very, very slowly in the church. And the other reality of the church is that, and I'm not saying this to get out of any of the controversy at all, but women have made themselves some wonderful places in the church, and some of our best scholars of theology and some of our best biblical scholars are women, because the priesthood was barred to them and they were not able to serve as priests. So they've served as scholars, and some real wonderful scholarship. I'm sure you can give your students some examples of women biblical or church history scholars, or you know, systematic theologians who are women.
Yeah. Well, look at our chapel. Our chapel's named after Saint Teresa of Avila. Absolutely. So yeah, she's a doctor of the church.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And you know, strong women like Saint Teresa, who had no problem, even though they couldn't be priests, telling priests, bishops, cardinals, and popes what they thought they should do. Right.
Right. Yeah. It is. Yes, it is. It can be controversial. It is the teaching. It is the teaching of the church. You know, for me, that's been. It's been a way that I've really learned to appreciate that the church is. It has its teachings. Her teachings are good when they challenge, right? And when when they're tough. And you can't, it's one of those things, you can't just ignore it, but it can force you to think about things in a way that you never would have.
Yeah, so, I agree with that. And I also think to myself and say to students all the time too, aren't you grateful, even though we know that the institution of the church is not perfect, it's full of sinful human beings, but aren't you grateful that there is one institution in the world, at least one institution in the world, that doesn't compromise on the highest standards and morals? You know, I'm glad that exists. I'm glad that there's one place, not that I, do all the best all the time. We're all sinful and we all make mistakes, but I'm glad there's a place that isn't really dependent on whether I'm doing it right or not, but that independent of me will hold humanity to the highest standards of morality and behavior, and won't compromise somehow. Won't compromise with the winds of change that blow through every few years, you know. I'm not saying the church doesn't change, because it does, but I also think the church's kind of role in the world is to be that light of eternity, you know, and God doesn't change. You know, God's love is constant, and God's justice is constant, and God is both, incredible, overwhelming love and justice. you know, and
Mhm.
from those
Mhm.
two principles flow a lot of the teaching of the church, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good. That's beautiful. Thank you, Father Vance.
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, yeah. Do you have any final words of advice for sophomores?
You know,
Sophomore.
when I was early in my teaching career, and you may be able to echo this as well, they always told us that sophomores were the worst group to teach. And of course, sophomore means wise fool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught sophomore English for many, many years, and I learned to really love sophomores.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about sophomores is that every day they come into class, they're kind of different because
Hmm.
there's so much growth that happens
Yeah.
sophomore year, and
Yes.
so much change and so much wisdom that's possible sophomore year. You know, and they get their driver's licenses, and they, you
Yeah.
know, turn 16 and all that stuff. And that's not lost on those of us who teach or who have taught sophomores. And so, you know, I'd encourage your students to trust you and to know that you care about them and you care about the changes that they're going through, and you remember your own awkward sophomore year and stuff like that too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
And I would just say to both your students and to the whole school that I want to be a priest for this community. And so if they need anything spiritually, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me or to you or to other mentors in their lives, because we want to help. We definitely want to help.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you very much, Father Vance.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Yeah,
Most welcome.
I
I
really
wish we could have
appreciate
done
it.
this live
I
where I
know,
could
I
have visited
know.
your classes,
Yeah.
but this is the way it is.
Well,
So
come fall, they'll know where to find you. So
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And the big juniors, right?
Yeah, I know. That's wild to me that they're
I
gonna
used to
that's
ask them, I would say, have you gotten your driver's license yet? And they'll say, well, I got it 2 weeks ago. And I said, well, I'll start the novena tonight. They'll say, what's a novena? So you can tell
Yeah.
them what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, we. I don't think we've done any novenas in class. So yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much, Father Vance.
You're most welcome. God bless you and your
All right.
ministry and your family and your
Thank
students.
you. Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
very much. All right.